Well, it's the end of the year. As this train wreck of a year finally comes to a close, there's never been a better time to improve as a player. These are the top 5 picks of how you can become a better player in 2021. Have alternative combos or plays. I see so many people trying to facilitate the same exact combo by running multiple copies of what's effectively their deck's card net. As someone who has done this before, I have learned that it's a lot better to have an alternate combo to get to the play that I want, rather than trying to rely on the same exact combo each and every time. This not only helps the deck's overall consistency, but I'm also not just a sitting duck with a bunch of bricks in my hand. Be patient. Let's say it's the standby phase of your opponent's turn, and you have a true king of all calamities on board, and you use the effect before your opponent even does anything. Now they chain infinite impermanence. Now what could have been a really powerful floodgate is basically just a big body that might not be sticking around very long. On that same note, if your opponent plays Magical Meltdown, and you try to ash it, your opponent can now just negate it with Cyframe Gamma. And what's more, they now have 2 monsters on board that they can do whatever they want with them. The point is, don't shotgun your plays. Wait for your opponent to commit to a play, and wait for a choke point to where they can't combo anymore. Instead of shotgunning VFD as soon as standby fate comes around, wait for your opponent to play a card or play the impermanence before activating VFD. Instead of ashing the Meltdown, ash the Alistair so that your opponent can't use Gamma. Take criticism. I get that not all criticism is helpful, but if someone that is consistently topping tier 2 events, such as regionals, is offering you some advice of how to play the game better, or a card or a strategy to help with your deck, that is at least worth listening to. You don't have to take all this criticism, but taking at least a little bit of it can vastly improve on how you play the game. On the flip side, if someone is being incredibly rude or toxic with their criticism, that is not helpful and that is not okay. As a personal tale to this one, I used to not take any criticism from anyone, and I was just kind of trapped in my own bubble thinking my decks were perfect the way they were. My decks are perfect. You're wrong. You're crazy. This probably wasn't helped by the fact that I knew someone that was so toxic with their criticisms about how I played the deck, and me as a player, that I ended up blocking them. But as I learned over time, not everyone is out to get me, or to make me feel bad for the deck that I'm playing, and I genuinely wanted to help, and I became more open to criticism. My decks aren't perfect, and there's always room for improvement. At the end of the day, it's your deck, and you ultimately get to choose what you do with it. But it's not a bad idea to learn from others, especially if they're a better player. Understand rulings. For every single player to understand every single minute ruling in the game is kind of a tall order. But understanding the basic rulings and even some of the more obscure ones can go a long way. For example, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. Its effect is destroy as many monsters on the field as possible, then special summon 2 kaiju monsters with different names from the deck, one at each side of the field. And that's all that's going to be relevant for this example. In order to activate it, there must be at least 1 monster on the field. That's pretty straightforward. But if there is a face-up blue-eyed spirit dragon on the field, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber cannot be activated, because it has a small floodgate to where neither player can special summon 2 or more monsters at the same time. Since Kaiju Slumber would be attempting to summon 2 monsters at the same time, one at each side of the field, this would be an illegal activation. This is also why you can only summon 1 monster with a pendulum summon when a spirit dragon is face up on the board with its effects live. And the biggest way you can improve as a player, read the card. Not just your cards, but your opponent's as well. Ask your opponent to read the card instead of just asking them what it does. It might be very tempting to just ask your opponent what the card does instead of reading a giant wall of text. Reading the card not only gives you information on what it does, but also keeps your opponent in check and makes sure they can actually do the thing they are attempting to do. For example, with Union Hanger, Your opponent attempts to normal summon B Buster Drake, and they use the effect of Union Hanger to target B. You ask, what does it do? Your opponent says it equips a Union monster from the deck. You say sure, and your opponent attempts to attach another B Buster Drake to B Buster Drake. However, if you would have read Union Hanger, you would have realized it specifically says with a different name. So, that would have been an illegal move. Conversely, reading your own cards helps you. If you don't, then you could potentially lock yourself out of what you're attempting to do, and your whole entire strategy falls to pieces in the middle of a tournament. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't noticed from my last video already, I have a long Furby. Her name is Lilith. And I'm hoping to have a video out relatively soon of how she was made, and kind of how I went about doing it. But if you like what you're seeing, subscribe to the channel. If you have a suggestion for a future video, I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. And if you're on social media, share this video. And while you're there, find me and follow me. My name is Brent, and I am Maxed Out Weird, Lilith, Duromon, and I all wish you a very happy new year. Peace.